Welcome back to the page, Potterheads. We've got a new chapter for Backward with Purpose, Part 1, Always and Always by Dead Woodpecker. And here we have it, Chapter 25, Undesirable Number 1.
Chapter 25, Undesirable Number 1. Chapter text. Harry knew about the outcome of his trial before anyone could tell him because his scar pulsed, and he felt a quivering flash of happiness. As he was dueling Mad-Eye Moody at the time, and losing badly, he rightfully attributed this to Voldemort. He held up his hand to end the duel. "No time to rest, Potter," Mad-Eye said. "I told you we'd be practicing as much as we can while we're hiding from the Ministry." "Give me a moment," Harry said. "I just got sentenced to Azkaban." Moody's mouth sagged open. He looked around the room, obviously searching for a Patronus of some kind, and then stared at Harry. "Just this moment." "Yeah," Harry said. "Voldemort told me. When he tried to kill me, he transferred some of his powers to me," Harry said carefully. "Didn't they tell you this? It's why I can speak Parseltongue, and why I can sometimes feel what he's feeling, if it's a particularly strong emotion. You can read you-know-who's mind?" "Not really," Harry shrugged. "Just his emotions. Sometimes I'll have visions, though, of what he's doing. And that's not very comfortable, let me tell you. If you ever doubt that Voldemort is the most evil bastard who ever walked the earth, just come find me. I'll set you straight. Let's ask Creature for a spot of tea, shall we?" Moody said after a long silence. Harry followed him out of Sirius Mother's bedroom, which Dumbledore had turned into a dueling room, with Sirius' wholehearted approval, down 2 flights of stairs and into the kitchen. Creature was humming, though it sounded more like he was croaking, a tune and preparing dinner. Harry automatically reached for cups and a kettle, but had his hand swatted away by magic. If Master Harry needs anything, he must ask Creature, the house elf said reproachfully. "Creature is here to help. Master Harry has other things to worry about." "You're right about that," Moody growled. He stumped over to the table, sat down, and propped his wooden leg up on an empty chair. "We'd like some tea, if you wouldn't mind, Creature." "Creature is happy to serve," Creature said. "I have to say that you've taken to confinement very well," Moody said. "I'm wondering if you're not an explosion waiting to happen." Harry examined his feelings, as he had for nearly every day for the last month. He had not expected himself to be pleased with his situation, yet he was. Frankly, the Ministry could sod off, for all he cared. Being sentenced to Azkaban was something he had expected since he got Dumbledore's Patronus. He'd only needed a moment to adjust. He took a sip of tea. "I'm not," he said. "I can deal with the manhunt. Actually, at the height of the anti-Harry Potter sentiment, the Ministry was offering 1,000,000 galleons for my capture. I've already dealt with this before." "Dumbledore tells me you used to have friends that you don't have now," Moody said. "That bothering you?" Harry felt a flash of bitterness when he thought of the Weasleys. He closed his eyes against it, and the rune that had haunted him since the end of his 3rd year was apparently painted on the backs of his eyelids. He opened them again. "It does," Harry answered honestly. "But I refuse to let it affect what we're trying to do. Actually, the Weasleys that worry me the most are Ginny and Ron. I can't imagine why they haven't shown up by now." "You sure they haven't turned on you?" Harry snorted. "Trust me, that is one thing that they would never, ever do. You'll find out when you meet them. I've been amazingly lucky with my friends, both this time and last time, and you'll find out why." "I'll believe you for now, Potter," Moody said. "But don't bottle it in. If you're feeling down, let me know and we'll go find some Death Eaters to take down." Harry laughed. The idea was a good one. He did want to rustle up a few of Voldemort's supporters. But he didn't want to make any moves like that until Ron and Ginny had joined him. "Where are they?" "That'll have to wait," he told Moody. "Besides, taking out Lockhart will be just as fun as taking out Death Eaters. I'm thinking of taking pictures and exposing his gross incompetence. Thought I'd send it to Witch Weekly. I might even give them a quote. And we're still waiting for the others to do that." "Just another week," Harry said. "We can't afford to wait any longer than that. If Lockhart is going to cause trouble, he's going to do it once the news hits the Prophet tomorrow." Harry thought of the plan they had made, and felt such bliss about it that he could not stop the broad smile from spreading across his face. It was perfect in all ways but one. They should have done this much sooner. Ron had been right, but in the aftermath of his exile from the Burrow and finding Sirius, all of them had forgotten. He thought of how it was the perfect revenge for being obliviated, and his grin grew even wider. Care to share what's so funny? Moody asked. Lots of things, actually, Harry said, imagining Lockhart's comeuppance. The fact that the Ministry of Magic is compiled of so many morons that they have no idea that they're working with us. I've always said they were a bunch of boobies, Moody said. Startled by the slang, Harry threw back his head and laughed. It felt good, laughing did. This was one of the reasons why he had not begun feeling resentful and angry with the rest of the wizarding world. The fact that Dumbledore could so skillfully manipulate the Ministry to further their aims, the fact that he now had Tonks and Moody on his side, even the fact that he did not have to go back to school and face Umbridge, but could instead take an active role in the war. He felt like he had a talisman in his chest, guarding against feelings of ill use. Moody then did something that surprised Harry a great deal. He opened his mouth, and a chuckle escaped. The chuckle turned into a belly laugh. Harry did not think he had ever seen Moody let loose before, and it only made Harry laugh harder. Bloody boobies, Harry gasped. I can't wait to see their faces, Moody said. Every last one of them. Especially Fudge's, that fool. Do you think they've gone mad? Tonks asked. She sounded greatly amused. If that's madness, I want some, Sirius said. Hey, everyone, Harry said. He threw a casual glance toward the door. Everyone except Snape, who was currently dancing attendance on Voldemort, crowded around the threshold as though afraid of entering. Honestly, he didn't know why they continued to think that he was going to fly off the handle. Did they really think that he hadn't expected this to happen? We're just talking about the mass stupidity of the Ministry. Voldemort's back, and they're immediately trying to F everything up. I'll be surprised if no one figures it out, Sirius said. Voldemort is on the move, and those at the Ministry who have anything between their ears. Precious few of them, you mean? Moody said. We'll notice that something isn't quite right, Sirius said. Harry asked. He chortled again. I don't think we have to worry about the boobies at the Ministry figuring out that Voldemort's back. Not until we're good and ready to let them know. That is, aren't you at all curious about the trial? Remus asked. You do remember that it was today, yes? Potter already knows, Moody said. Said you know who told him. He was very happy about something, Harry explained. I thought it must be because of the trial. So is it life in Azkaban? Or am I to be kissed straight away? Life in Azkaban, Sirius said. Mostly because you're still underage, we think. Well, Harry said, tell me everything. Harry listened carefully as Dumbledore told him of how Cedric Diggory and Victor Crumb had testified. Fleur Delacour had as well, though her statements were not as damning as Cedric's and Crumb's. He wondered about that. Was it possible that she remembered that he had helped her escape the Grindylows during the second task? And Augusta Longbottom and Xenophilius Lovegood defended you, Sirius said. I was ready to stand up and applaud, honestly. I didn't, though. Mustn't let them think I don't hate you. They did, Harry said blankly. He remembered vaguely that Neville's Gran had believed Harry and Dumbledore last time when they had tried to tell the world that Voldemort had returned. And Luna and her father had believed as well. But this was quite unexpected. He wondered if Neville and Luna had told him anything. But no, they wouldn't. Why were they witnesses, though? They weren't, Remus said. They interrupted the proceedings. Zeno did it first, and then Augusta did. I believe they're being questioned. Don't look like that. Harry, the Ministry won't torture them. How'd you know? Harry asked. Because they're still playing by the rules, Dumbledore said. I made sure of that before I departed. I reminded them that a difference in opinion does not make someone a public enemy or a threat. Harry nodded. He may not trust the methods that the Ministry employed, but he did trust Dumbledore. He would have to find some way to warn Neville, Luna, and Hermione that they could not be openly supportive of him, and neither could their parents. He wasn't worried about Mr. and Mrs. Granger. They were muggles, after all. But the Ministry could very well decide, once they reached advanced states of paranoia, that Mrs. Longbottom and Mr. Lovegood were in collusion with Harry. Dumbledore, with the help of the others, told him every last detail. Except for one. I spoke to the Weasleys, Sirius said. They said, no. Harry held up his hand. I don't want to know what they said. I can guess well enough. I don't want to hear it. Everyone besides Dumbledore exchanged uncomfortable glances. Dumbledore certainly was aware of the situation. The look in his eye was so full of compassion that Harry had to look away. Harry did not want to have to think about the fact that sometimes he woke up wishing that he had the closest thing he'd ever had to a family again. It didn't help that at those times the image of the rune was so bright that he could almost see it with his eyes open. "You will be interested to know," Dumbledore said after a long, awkward pause, "that Gilderoy Lockhart has petitioned to have a hearing before the Wisingamot. Is that normal?" Harry said blankly. "What? He's going to turn himself in." "No," Dumbledore said. "I believe he is going to attempt to take advantage of your unpopularity and attempt to be rewarded or compensated for what happened in the Chamber of Secrets. The function of the Wisingamot is not only to judge but also to reward, you know." "You know him," Sirius put in. "He only wants recognition. He's a very greedy boy." "And did the Wisingamot agree?" "We did," Dumbledore said. "His hearing will be in 3 days." "Ron and Ginny had better get here soon," Harry murmured. "Otherwise we'll have to do it without them. This changes things, though," he grinned, "and makes our lives a hell of a lot easier." Harry expected that the Daily Prophet would give Harry's trial front page status. He was rather notorious, after all. He simply did not expect it to be in the Evening Prophet, and when the delivery owl flew in an open window, and Harry saw his own face blinking up from a photo taken by Rita Skeeter last year. "They must have really hustled this one through," he said, raising his eyebrows. Harry did the honors of reading it out loud. "Harry Potter sentenced to Azkaban by Aggie Lafferty. Today, on July the 21 SD, Harry Potter was convicted of using the Imperius Curse against Triwizard champion Cedric Diggory and international Quidditch player Victor Crumb. He is also guilty of using the Cruciatus Curse through Mr. Crumb on Fleur Delacour and Cedric Diggory. Courtroom 10 was filled to the brim with witches and wizards from all over the country. The evidence was undeniable, and the Wisingamot came back with the verdict after only minutes of deliberation. That is not to say that the wizarding world is able to breathe freely. Harry Potter, Dark Wizard, is still at large, despite the best efforts of the Aurors. Even private citizens are doing their best to find Potter, though the Ministry warns that Potter is extremely dangerous and at best left to the Aurors. Sirius Black, who was wrongfully convicted of crimes and sentenced to Azkaban, however, has stated that he is doing his best to keep a lookout for Potter. "I never thought I would see the day that my godson went against everything his parents stood for. James and Lily are surely turning over in their graves." "Nice touch, Sirius," Harry said. "I'm actually really impressed. I'll bet you just won over loads of people who might still be suspicious of you." "Remus told me what to say," Sirius shrugged. Harry laughed. "Well, not entirely. He told me to say the turning over in the grave bit. You don't think it was too much?" "Nah," Harry said. "It'll charm all the witches." Poor Sirius Black, so abused, yet so noble. Albus Dumbledore, Chief Warlock of the Wisingamot and Headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, is also deeply involved in the ongoing search for Potter. "I have increased the amount of protection Hogwarts has to offer to the fullest extent of my capabilities," he assures parents. "If Potter returns, I will know it." "Yeah, you'll know it," Harry said. "And you won't tell anyone about it either." "Yes," Dumbledore agreed. "But I thought it wise not to mention that. Incidentally, the wards are extremely strong. If you do need to come to Hogwarts, make sure that you go through Aberforth's pub. Aurors are already being stationed there, and I can't trust that they won't find out about the other secret passages." "You told Aberforth?" Harry furrowed his brow. "Not the details," Dumbledore said. "But he knows that Voldemort has returned and that I am working to help you defeat him. He will not say a thing. Sturgis Podmore, Daedalus Diggle, and Hestia Jones likewise know. Do not worry, Harry, I do not intend to tell them your secret. But we need as many allies as we can get. Do you not agree?" "What about Kingsley Shacklebolt, then?" Harry asked. "Kingsley is another matter entirely," Dumbledore said. "I've recalled the original, living members of the Order of the Phoenix. Kingsley was not a part of that. It is my hope that we can get him on our side, but it would be exceedingly dangerous to approach him with this at the moment. I cannot even begin to guess what he might do. He might listen, but there's a chance that he could go to Scrimgeour and Fudge. Harry sighed and continued to read. Potter has been named undesirable number 1, bumping Peter Pettigrew and Augustus Rookwood, escapees from Azkaban, down the list. The Daily Prophet wonders, however, if these 2 escapes are related to Potter. It is well known that Potter was indeed the one to catch Pettigrew. Though there is no conclusive proof, it is not unlikely. When asked about this, Rufus Scrimgeour, head of the Ore Department, told us, "It is something that we are revisiting. There is no denying that Potter has a connection with both. He caught Pettigrew, and Augustus Rookwood worked for the Department of Mysteries, and his work involved prophecies." "I'm undesirable number 1 again," Harry said. "Ron's going to shit himself when he sees this. At least there is no way to connect me to Pettigrew and Rookwood. They never did work out how either of them made it out of Azkaban. The Ministry has deduced that Potter will perhaps make an attempt to retrieve the prophecy. He is the only one alive who can do so without going insane. Therefore, the door to the Department of Mysteries is heavily guarded. Let him come for it," Minister Cornelius Fudge said. "Then we'll catch him and throw him in Azkaban." Remarkable though this may sound, Potter is not friendless. Augusta Longbottom and Xenophilius Lovegood stubbornly denied the fact that Potter used the Imperius curse against Cedric Diggory and Victor Crumb. They drew on the fact that Neville Longbottom and Luna Lovegood are great friends with Potter. After what happened to his parents, my grandson would never ally himself with a dark wizard. I believe there has been some mistake, she stated after the proceedings. Xenophilius Lovegood was heard saying similar things, though he was not available for comment. While it may be true that their loyalty to their progeny is what inspired this, they are at this moment being questioned about Potter's whereabouts. Lucius Malfoy, head of the prominent Malfoy family, has a darker thought. "Strong witches and wizards have been led astray before," he said. "I wouldn't doubt that Potter has enchanted them to believe he is innocent. He has a compelling point, which I am sure the Ministry will explore." "Can you believe how stupid they are?" Sirius asked. "Lucius Malfoy is one of the most senior Death Eaters. Surely other people have realized that he bought his way out of Azkaban." "Galleons erase everything," Remus said. "You know that, Sirius. Merlin knows the Blacks knew that lesson better than anyone." Sirius grimaced. "Don't remind me. The Ministry will also be issuing pamphlets. They will be guides to helping you and your family protect themselves. Albus Dumbledore will be writing it himself, so the Daily Prophet urges you to take it very seriously." Harry raised his eyebrows. "That's a damn good idea. Last time the pamphlets didn't go out until after Voldemort was unmasked, and they were rubbish. With you writing them, they might actually be useful." "I hope so," Dumbledore said, his eyes twinkling. "I will attempt to live up to your exacting standards." Harry tapped his chin, pretending to be thoughtful. "I think I have a way that you could." "What did you say?" "Live up to my exacting standards." "Oh, fire whiskey," Harry said. "Not. I don't want to get drunk. But I think we all need a bit of warmth, and liquor is the way to manufacture it. And when I drink alone, I apparently start screaming at Voldemort. Probably not the best idea." "Creature," Sirius called. Creature, who had made himself scarce upon the entry of the other members of the Order of the Phoenix, immediately appeared in the kitchen. "Would you mind going over to Godric's Hollow and getting a few bottles of fire whiskey? I think no more than 3. Harry stared at him. 3? I didn't really plan on drinking that much." "You may not," Sirius said, shrugging. "But I do. You have no idea how difficult it is to act like I've turned my back on you, Harry." "It's a horrible feeling," Remus added. Tonks nodded her head. Her hair had shifted in color from a bright, shocking pink to a blue that was almost black. Apparently, this was supposed to convey somberness. "Besides," Sirius said, "your father would like the idea of his best mates getting drunk with his son." "My mom probably wouldn't, though," Harry pointed out. "We'll just hope that she isn't watching," Sirius said. The last time Harry had tasted fire whiskey had been one of the most gut-wrenching experiences of his life. Not as bad as the aftermath of the final battle, of course, but it was awful in a different way. This time it was different. It was more relaxed, and he was not alone. "I think we ought to make a toast," Tonks piped up unexpectedly. "I know we've already started, but—" Her voice trailed away. "A fine idea," Remus smiled at her. Harry hid his own smile. He caught Sirius' eyes and mouthed, "I give them 4 months before they're together." Sirius shook his head and replied, still silent, "Remus has that furry little problem. It'll take him at least 6 months to get over it." Harry held up 10 fingers for 10 galleons and quirked his brow. Sirius made the thumbs-up sign. "I'll do it," Dumbledore said. He raised his glass and looked at Harry. "To the boy who lived." Harry rolled his eyes and drank it down anyway. He lazily flicked his wand, and the other's glasses filled to the brim once more. Sirius grinned wickedly. To undesirable number 1. May Ginny always and always disagree. Harry choked on his fire whiskey and gasped, his eyes streaming. Remus snorted and Tonks laughed. Even Dumbledore and Moody chuckled a little. He looked around the table and wished they were there. After the toasts, they settled into the type of comfort, even Moody and Tonks, that generally bespoke of longtime friends. Harry sipped his fire whiskey slowly and looked around at them all. Dumbledore, brave and cunning. Moody, wary and vigilant. Sirius' easy grin hit a keen mind. Remus' quiet air did the same. Tonks was loyal and had a heart as big as Britain. He could easily name the names of those who were not here, but he did not need to. These were the best of his allies, of the adults. Sirius, Remus, and Tonks became steadily fuzzier as the night wore on. Dumbledore had gone back to Hogwarts, and Moody had drifted off, saying that he'd allow the young set to have fun. Harry wasn't entirely sober, but he was also not transfiguring himself, as Tonks had done, into a tall, buxom lady who had obviously been some kind of sensation in the wizarding world. Everyone else at the table seemed to recognize her. Nor was he dancing a wizard two-step that involved levitating the other person 2 feet after every turn and spinning her around like a top, as Remus was doing. Nor was he singing along with Sirius, who could not carry a tune. He was, however, laughing so hard that tears streamed down his face. "Your father was the one who forced us into learning how to dance," Remus said. His face was red from the drink, and he was beaming. "Remember Sirius?" "How could I forget?" Sirius grinned. "I lost my virginity to the instructor." Remus gaped at him. "You're kidding?" "So did I." Harry roared with laughter. Sirius and Remus gaped at each other, and then at Harry, who was now wiping his eyes with the sleeve of his robes. Tonks lost control of shape and sat down on her chair. "Hard. I can't believe you 2 nutters lost it to the same witch." "What did my dad say?" Harry asked. He tipped his chair back so that it balanced on 2 legs. "He was trying to do damage control," Sirius replied. "He had 2 left feet. He was great on the Quidditch pitch, but on a dance floor? We were all rather glad that we'd learned Episki, because James would have been in even worse trouble if he'd." Crack! Ginny appeared. Before Harry could say or do anything, there was another crack and Ron too arrived. Harry was so surprised by the apparition of Ron and Ginny that he toppled over backward and landed on the clean floor. It knocked the wind out of him, and as he lay there he noticed several things. The first of which, the most important, was that both of them looked extremely angry and annoyed. He hoped this had nothing to do with him. If Ginny was mad at him, it would take coaxing for him to be able to kiss her. The second was that neither one of them had brought anything but the robes on their backs. Harry narrowed his eyes. They weren't planning to stay. "Are you drinking?" Ron said, and his tone was one of disbelief. "Ron, my good man," Sirius said. Ron and Ginny exchanged glances. Harry could not read what might be the purpose of this silent communication. They looked almost unsure of their welcome. So Ginny said, "We've left the burrow. We're not going back, and that's final." "What took you so long?" Harry asked. "It's been a month." Ron gaped at him. Ginny narrowed her eyes. Again, they exchanged looks. "You mean," Ron said in a strangled voice, "that you've been waiting for us to join you?" "Harry, what the hell's going on? Why aren't you brooding or angry that we couldn't take it anymore and joined you in hiding? Aren't you supposed to be doing the hero thing and pushing everyone else away because you decided to go it alone?" Harry considered that. He probably should get up off the floor, but he found to his own surprise that he was a bit fuzzier than he initially thought. "No," he said finally. A small warm hand grasped his and pulled him up. "No," Ginny said. "Don't tell me you've finally learned that lesson." "Actually," Harry said. I figure that just because the Ministry's a bunch of boobies doesn't mean that I should just let Voldemort roam free. Ron laughed, though he still looked tense and shaken. Boobies? Mad-Eye taught him that word, we think, Tonks said. He's been saying it all night. Harry furrowed his brow and looked directly into Ginny's bright brown eyes. He did not like how they were drawn a bit at the corners, nor the unusual brightness. Did you really think I didn't want you here? Really? And anyway, we're not really in hiding. I mean, we are, but we aren't going to stay cooped up here. Now that you two have joined us, we're going after Lockhart. Ron smiled. Finally, Harry sat down in his chair and pulled Ginny onto his lap. He kissed the side of her head and murmured, I've missed you. Why didn't you come sooner? We didn't know if that would mess things up, Ron explained. We thought you might want us, I don't know, at Hogwarts next year or something with Hermione, Neville, and Luna. Since we had no way of communicating with any of you, we thought it best to wait out the summer. Then what brings you here now? Sirius asked. Ron and Ginny stiffened and exchanged another weighted look. Harry was pretty certain that they'd had at least 2 reasons for leaving the burrow, their mother and their father. Fuzzy though he might be, both of them looked frayed and ragged around the edges. Harry gritted his teeth, and a little bubble of anger popped in his belly. They had a row with their parents, Harry told Sirius, Remus, and Tonks. I'm guessing it was about me. He turned to look at Ron and Ginny again. I don't want to know the details. I really don't. Ginny looked relieved. We didn't want to tell you. Can we have some of that fire whiskey? Ron asked. HP. Lockhart lived in a rather large and lavish townhouse on a fashionable street in London. Tonks had told them that a number of younger witches and wizards lived in this area. Generally, they were the hard-partying type with little to offer the rest of the world. Harry was completely unsurprised that Lockhart had found himself here, though he had to wonder how many people had to have been obliviated before he could afford a place like this. Mad-Eye Moody, disguised as a distinguished older gentleman with a smooth, unscarred face, operated right behind Ron, Harry, and Ginny. He immediately strode back and forth around the wrought iron fence. He appeared to find what he'd been looking for. He knelt down, drew his wand, and tapped a stone. I've got the wards, he growled. If you 3 aren't out in a half an hour. Don't worry, Mad-Eye, Ron said comfortably. Lockhart hasn't got a chance. He's about as useless as they come. If we're in longer than half an hour, it's because we're laughing too hard to move. Harry, Ron, and Ginny were not disguised with Polyjuice Potion or by the complex art of human transfiguration. This was part of the plan. Harry patted the pocket in his robes, checking to make absolute certain that the 2 bottles of potions Snape had made for them were still there. He could not help but grin. As soon as they were on the front stoop, Harry erected a shield that kept the door hidden from both muggles and wizards. It was rudimentary and hastily done, but it would have to do. Ginny pointed her wand and blasted the door of its hinges. Harry and Ron exchanged grins. This had been a long time in coming. While Lockhart could not do much worse damage than Harry had already done for now, he could still be a threat when the truth of Voldemort's return was revealed. It was a slim chance. Mostly they were doing this for personal revenge. And Harry had to admit to himself that it felt pretty good. They did not even bother to hide themselves. This mission actually had more to do with Harry making a public appearance than humiliating Lockhart. According to Snape, Voldemort was beginning to think that Harry was dead. Squeals and panicked movements came from upstairs. Harry climbed the stairs, followed by Ron and Ginny. Lockhart was trying to apparate, but he could not. Moody was holding him with an anti-apparition jinx. Ron snorted, and Harry sent him a sideways grin. Professor Lockhart, Ron called. Come out, come out. We want to talk to you. Go away. Lockhart screamed. His voice sounded muffled, even through the door. Think he's hiding under the bed? Harry asked. Let's find out, Ginny said. She did not blow the door up, but opened it with a simple Aloha Mora. Lockhart was, indeed, hiding under the bed. He was trying to be quiet, but whimpers kept escaping from him. Ron raised his wand and caused the heavy, 4-poster bed with lavender bedclothes to slam against the opposite wall. Lockhart lay face down with his hands over his head. He only wore a nightshirt, and Harry saw quite a different side to the fraud than he had ever wanted to see. "Pull your shirt down," Ron said with disgust. You can't do magic," Lockhart whispered. "The trace. The Aurors will come. For you?" "Doubt it," Ron said. "And there's no need to be hostile. We just gonna have a little chat." "PP, please," Lockhart whimpered. "You obliviated me," Harry said coldly. "How many times have you used your wand to take credit for someone else's achievements?" "And never. I never obliviated you." Harry sent a stinging hex directed at his foot. "Don't lie, Lockhart. Harry was trying to save me, and you obliviated him," Ginny said. She turned to Harry. "What do you think we should do to him?" "I say we kill him," Ron said loudly. Harry knew that he was only half joking. Lockhart screamed, "Just what the cowardly little squit deserves." "That might be a good idea," Harry said, pretending to think it over. "It would solve a lot of problems. I heard about the little hearing you have set up with the Wisengamot. I've got to admit that I don't really want you to take the credit for what I did, especially when you could have ruined everything." "I suggest you keep your mouth shut," Ginny said, "until we tell you to open it." "Here's the thing, Lockhart," Harry said. He crouched down. "You aren't worth killing," he whispered. He tilted the other man's head back and poured the first potion down the man's throat. "You know what this is? It's going to force you to tell the truth. That means that when you go before the Wisengamot tomorrow," Ron interjected gleefully, "you're going to tell them all about how you obliviated Harry. I wouldn't expect that to be the only memory charm you admit to." "Why?" Lockhart wailed. "Because you're also going to give the Wisengamot a message," Harry said pleasantly. "And after that, you're going to leave the country. I expect you'll want to. I'm afraid you're going to look rather bad after tomorrow. Only 7 Best Smile Awards. You'll never receive another again. You're finished in Britain." Lockhart stuttered and stammered. He was unable to tell a lie, so he could not complete what he wanted to say. "You can't force me." Lockhart knew perfectly well, the entire wizarding world of Britain did, that Harry was capable of the Imperius curse. "Yes, he can," said Ron, who also had caught the gist of what Lockhart was trying to say. He nudged Lockhart with his trainer. "Everyone knows that Harry used the Imperius curse." "I'll tell them," Lockhart said. "I'll tell them you were here." "Yeah, that's sort of the point, you arse," Ginny said. "You're going to tell the Wisengamot exactly what happened tonight. And give them a message from us," Ron said. Harry handed him the bottle containing the compelling draft, which would force Lockhart to go before the witches and wizards of the Wisengamot. "And make sure you've got a truth sensor there, so they'll believe you. Tell them, be wary," Harry said. This was to the wizarding population as a whole. Then, to those who supported Voldemort and would understand the true meaning of this message, beware. HPHPHPHPHPHPHP. Gilderoy Lockhart, Fraud, by Maggie Clapham. In perhaps the most unique hearing the Wisengamot has ever held, Gilderoy Lockhart admitted to no less than 40 counts of illegal memory charms. He stood before our judicial branch of the Ministry of Magic and told everyone there that his heroic deeds were in fact not done by him. True censors were in place, as per the request of Lockhart, and it was revealed by Percy Ignatius Weasley, court scribe, that what he said was completely true. In an even more bizarre twist of events, it is also true that Harry Potter, Ronald Weasley, and Ginevra Weasley, for a full article on the missing Weasley children, see page 4, visited Lockhart. Apparently, the purpose of this visit was to prevent Lockhart from claiming that he was the one to defeat the Basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets almost 3 years ago. Lucius Malfoy suggested that Potter was hoping that his use of the Imperius Curse and the Cruciatus Curse would be forgiven upon the reminder that he had once been viewed as a hero. Potter also delivered what can only be construed as a threat. "Potter deliberately sent Lockhart here," Albus Dumbledore said. Lockhart repeated the message no less than 5 times. "Be wary. Beware. I think it would be wise to heed his warning." HPHPHPHPHPHPHPHP. Warning. Warning. Sexy bits ahead. Avast, ye underage readers. Harry stared at Ginny. Ginny stared at Harry. They only took their eyes off each other to stare at the grandfather clock in the sitting room. It was almost 11 o'clock, but the hands moved so slowly that Harry wondered if it just might be broken. He looked back at Ginny. Her eyes were half shut and she was eyeing his lips. He thought she might be purposefully tormenting him. "Either of you want to play a game of chess?" Ron asked. He was smirking, so Harry knew that he was not serious. Harry made a rude hand gesture at him. Today was the 10th of August, and Ginny would officially be 14 years old in little more than an hour. Harry felt almost sick with desire. Ginny waved her wand and whispered muffliato. "Do you remember our first time?" she asked. Harry gaped at her. "That's like asking me if I remember my own name." Of course I remember our first time. He had only thought about it every 7 seconds throughout the entire day and most of the last week. Ever since they had humiliated Lockhart and had taken him down several notches in front of the entire wizarding community, he had thought of little else except that Ginny would be 14, and their self-imposed abstinence would be at an end at long last. He only hoped that this first time would be as amazing as the last first time. And then he remembered how badly it all had begun. Harry was slowly being driven out of his mind. He and Ginny were under the same roof for the first time in over a year. Harry had apologized profusely to her just the other day. He never should have let his fear over what Voldemort might do to her force him away. The destruction of the burrow had already proved that she wasn't safe. She had forgiven him. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that Grimmauld Place was far smaller than Hogwarts. The only secluded places were only private for approximately 10 minutes before someone wandered by. He lay on the bed, actively fantasizing about her. Everything about her filled him with desire. Her hair, her hands, her eyes, and the way her lips felt when she kissed him. He gritted his teeth and closed his eyes. He wanted to hold her. What he was doing was a poor substitute. Crack! For one horrible moment, Harry froze, completely unable to move. Ginny, who had just turned 17, had operated into his room. He stared at her. He could not help but notice that she only wore a nightgown. The light illuminated her body from behind, and for a second Harry couldn't breathe. And she stared at him, though not at his face. There could be no denying what he was doing. Harry did the only thing he could think of. He dived underneath the bedclothes that had tangled around his legs and prayed fervently that she hadn't really been there at all. He'd only imagined her. He was blushing so fiercely that he thought he might pass out from the abrupt shift in where the majority of the blood in his body was located. He thought he might vomit. She hadn't left. Why didn't she leave? "Are you going to let me obliviate you?" Harry finally asked. She answered by crawling under the bedclothes with him. He jerked horribly and almost fell off the bed. "What are you hiding from?" she asked. Her voice was low and a little husky, and Harry's heart took a gigantic leap. She was close enough that her hair tickled his nose. He wanted to reach out and hold her, but still had that sick, embarrassed feeling in the pit of his stomach. "From a most humiliating experience of my life," Harry answered honestly. "I thought," she said, "it was pretty arousing." He turned to look at her, forgetting that the covers were pulled over both their heads, and he couldn't see her unless he was brave enough to come out. Not likely. She scooted closer, and they were almost touching. "I do it too," Ginny said quietly. And then Harry was kissing her with all the pent-up longing that he had felt since the day of his 17th birthday. He had one hand in her long hair and one hand on her naked back. He pulled away. "You're naked. So are you," Ginny pointed out. "Well, almost." He took a deep, shuddering breath. It did not help. The blankets were rather suffocating. He poked his head out, and Ginny did the same. He stared at her for what felt like several minutes, or perhaps several days. Her eyes were heavy-lidded, and her lips were slightly parted. He knew that look well. He spent the last few weeks of his 6th year trying to put that look on her face every chance he got. "I don't want to be obliviated," she whispered. She picked up the wand she had laid on the nightstand and pointed it at the door, saying the charm that would lock them in. She added the silencing charm, and Harry's heart skipped several beats. She pulled him flush up against her and kissed him deeply. Harry returned the kiss urgently. His hands traveled down her back into her bum, and he pulled her tighter against him. He propped her leg up on his, reached between their bodies, and began to play. "I've heard of something," he whispered in her ear. "I could kiss you." She didn't seem quite able to reply, but he took that as a yes. He threw the bedclothes, the same ones he had so recently been hiding underneath, off the bed, ripped off his boxers, and slid down her body. He could not help but stare, as he had never actually seen her like this before. They'd been too worried about getting caught. After a few moments, he bent his head, and she screamed. Harry had no idea how long he kept at it, though he knew that with every passing second, his desire grew. Small hands tugged at his shoulders. He followed them. He had never seen her look quite as beautiful as she did just then. She was flushed and sweaty, and her breath caught on a whimper. Her bright eyes were open, though, and that blazing look was once more on her face. "Harry," she moaned, "I want you." "That's good," Harry said, "because I want you too." He fitted himself against her, resting his weight on his elbows. With one hand, he brushed her hair out of her eyes. With the other, he adjusted himself. "I think you should know, though, before we do this, I'm in love with you." She pushed up against him with her hips. "That's good," Ginny said, "because I'm in love with you too." He kissed her on the lips. He kept kissing her until they were fully joined. He did not stop kissing her, even though towards the end they both had trouble with anything more than moaning into each other's mouths, until they finished. Harry came out of reverie to realize that it was nearly time, and Ron had long since departed. 10 minutes until midnight. If they walked slowly, they would be in their bedroom at just the right moment. He stood up and held out his hand to her. "Just so you know," Harry said, "before we do this, I'm in love with you." She grinned widely. "Good, because I'm in love with you too." "Always and always, Ginny," Harry said.
Thanks for coming back, Harry Potter fans. We've got another chapter for Backward with Purpose, Part 1, Always and Always, by Dead Woodpecker. And here we have it, Chapter 26, Without Warning.
Chapter 26, Without Warning. Chapter text. Snape's face was pale, and his black eyes glittered in the light of the lamps that lit the sitting room of Sirius' home in Godric's Hollow. The corners of his mouth dipped in a near-perpetual frown. He was in a horrible mood, Harry knew, but still. Snape was alive. A glass of fire whiskey floated out from the kitchen, and Harry fought the urge to roll his eyes. Sirius apparently thought that if he remained hidden, Snape would not know who had given him the drink. "He is planning something," Snape said, after taking a long sip from the glass. "He would not tell me what it is." "You don't think he's found out you didn't write that article, do you?" Ron asked. "No," Harry and Snape said at the same time. "I'm still alive," Snape continued. "The Dark Lord would not allow me to live if he found out that I lied to him. No, it has nothing to do with the prophecy, though he has grown impatient of being thwarted at every turn." Harry, whose connection with Voldemort allowed him to feel this quite plainly, grimaced. On the one hand, Voldemort was pleased by the fact that the wizarding world had turned its back on Harry. On the other, the prophecy was guarded by Ministry of Magic employees. Voldemort alternated between fury and glee these days. It was not exactly comfortable. "Any thoughts, Harry?" Ginny asked. "No," Harry said. "Just little twinges, nothing that could tell us what he's planning. Damn it. Why doesn't he tell you? Do you think it's because he doesn't really trust you?" Snape shook his head. "No, the Dark Lord is as pleased with me as he is with Lucius Malfoy. I believe he trusts me as much as he trusts anyone. He is keeping his plans to himself. I have a feeling we'll find out whatever it is soon enough," Sirius said grimly. "Potter," Snape said, "do you happen to know how many Death Eaters there were in your future?" "We never knew the exact number," Ginny said. "More than 100. "What? Every time I'm summoned to his side," Snape said evenly. "There are more and more servants. I am concerned that the ill will toward Potter is making it easier for the Dark Lord to sway witches and wizards." "Dumbledore said that might happen," Harry said. "Just keep trying to get their names." "Any ministry workers?" "Several," Snape said. 2 in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. They aren't senior members at all. Thank Merlin, it has not yet come to that. 1 in the Transportation Office. There are more, I am sure. Are they in Periust?" Ginny asked quietly. "No," Snape said. He withdrew 3 flasks containing several hairs. "On a different, though related note, I have procured the hair you required from Yaxley, Electo Caro, and Amicus Caro." "Excellent," Harry said. Their next order of business required a public kidnapping. It was just as well that they would be disguised as real Death Eaters. Ron beamed. It had been his plan, and it was quite a good one. Hermione, Harry thought, will be proud. Now, if you will excuse me, Snape said, I must also speak with Dumbledore this night. Snape never stayed longer than he had to. Harry wondered if he thought he would not be a welcome guest. It was true that Snape was sour, sarcastic, and more than a little mean. His company was not exactly pleasant, but it was not quite the chore that Harry had expected it to be. He furrowed his brow and poked at his feelings. What he found there surprised him. He respected Snape, he recognized the other man's bravery, and he actually enjoyed Snape's company. Harry was so distracted by this utterly strange turn of events that he barely even noticed Snape depart. How could he possibly enjoy Snape's company? They were allies, not friends. Sure, he generally enjoyed the biting comments, if he didn't take it seriously, and he hadn't once since he had returned to his 11-year-old body. They were amusing, and he did get the impression that Snape did not do it to torture him. But what the hell? Scar painting you, Potter? Moody asked gruffly. No, Harry said distractedly. Just thinking about what we're going to do tomorrow now that we've got the necessary ingredients. You do know where to find them, yes? Of course, Moody said. Harry pulled Ginny up to bed soon after that, despite the fact that it was only 8. Not that they actually made it to a bed for long minutes. After they had finished and had collapsed exhausted onto the bed, Ginny traced little, soothing patterns on his chest with her fingernails. What had you looking so odd when Snape left? Ginny asked. I know you aren't really worried about tomorrow. Harry told her. I just never expected it, Ginny, he finished. But I suppose it's because he's very different now. And I trust him. But I actually see him as one of us. Not just a member of the Order of the Phoenix, but one of us. People I like spending time with, and not only because of Voldemort, and not only to make plans. Ginny snorted. You sound so aghast, Harry. I've been seeing this coming for a while. You could have warned me, Harry said sourly. He felt her shrug. Didn't think you needed it. It's weird, Harry said again. I know, she said softly. Everything has changed so much. Snape, my family. Her voice trailed away. Tears fell on his chest, and he pulled her closer, offering wordless comfort. He did not know what had been said before she and Ron had left the burrow. He had not even read the articles in the Daily Prophet about the Weasleys and their 2 missing children, suspected to be on the run with Harry Potter. He kept away from it, but he knew that whatever had been said had infuriated Ginny and Ron. But, more than that, it had broken their hearts. Harry clenched his teeth. Ginny drew in a shuddering breath. He turned over onto his side and pulled her closer to him. He stroked her hair and her back while she cried in earnest. Harry knew quite well what she was going through. When he had been exiled from the burrow, he had felt like his heart had been ripped out of his chest. He had understood. He knew that no mother and father could condone what he and Ginny had done. He'd even understood that they had legitimate concerns about his influence on their children. But holding Ginny while she cried nearly every night and seeing the contained grief in Ron's eyes, Harry was not so understanding anymore. He suspected that Ginny and Ron had another reason for keeping the details of what had happened to themselves, besides just sparing Harry's feelings. When all was said and done, when the world knew the truth about Voldemort and Harry's role in his defeat, Ginny and Ron wanted Harry to forgive. He wondered if that was even possible anymore. He did not want Ginny to cry herself to sleep again. He tilted her head up and gave her a long, slow kiss. They had perfected this form of making love long ago. He knew exactly what she needed to draw comfort from it. He used every skill at his disposal, and she fell asleep with a smile. So did Harry. The next morning was spent in busy preparations, mostly on the part of Moody. Harry's, Ron's, and Ginny's role did not require all that much finesse, though Harry was looking forward to it nonetheless. He felt confident. They were taking a risk, but it was worth it. His skills at dueling, and Ginny's and Ron's, were increasing dramatically at the insistence of Moody. He could only beat Moody 1 time out of 3, but he was improving bit by bit. Moody left the house a little after noon. As Harry knew that it might be a long wait, he forced himself to practice human transfiguration on Ginny and Ron. He didn't think he would ever be particularly good at it like Hermione was. As disguise was essential to all of their plans, however, it was possible that Polyjuice Potion might fail them one day. He doggedly kept on. Sirius heckled him for a while. Harry, what are you meaning to tell Ginny when you give her bigger breasts? Are you giving Ron a little extra, too? He left several hours later to attend a meeting at the ministry between Scrimgeour, Shacklebolt, the Weasleys, and a few others. It was, Harry thought, fortuitous that Sirius would have an ironclad alibi. At a little past 4, Moody's Bear Patronus jumped through the wall and faced Harry. I've got them. Do your thing. Ginny immediately strode over to the cauldron of polyjuice potion that was kept in the small room off the sitting room. She dipped a cup and added the hair that Snape had procured from Electo Caro. It steamed and turned a sickening shade of red. Harry fought the urge to knock it out of her hands. Harry took up his own cup, as did Ron. They stood together in a triangle and toasted each other. This really was a brilliant plan, Ron, Harry told him. Ron grinned, not all modest. Several days after they had taken care of Lockhart, Ron had suggested they discredit and hopefully send to Azkaban some of the new Death Eaters that had joined Voldemort and help protect Ollivander at the same time. Initially, Harry had thought that it would be wise to expose some of the more senior members, such as Lucius Malfoy or not, or any of the others that had been present at the graveyard. But Ron had pointed out the major flaw in that. Not only were they tricking the Ministry into suspecting the Caros and Yaxley were in league with Harry, but they were tricking Voldemort into thinking his 3 new Death Eaters had done this on their own initiative. In order to do that, it could not be traced back to Harry, so the older, more dangerous wizards had to be left alone for now. Harry could not help but grin. To rampant stupidity, he said, and tossed the potion back. He grimaced. It tasted the way unwashed body and pond scum smelled, but he didn't retch. Yaxley's a nasty blighter, Ron muttered, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. As soon as they completed their change, Harry grasped their hands, turned on the spot, and took them to Diagon Alley. Despite the fact that he was disguised as a Death Eater, it felt good to be out and about in the sunshine. It was quite crowded. Parents and Hogwarts students were bustling from shop to shop, picking up last-minute items they needed for the coming term. Harry kept a close watch for Neville, Hermione, and Luna. He did not truly expect to see them, but he looked anyway. Ron was so busy looking for Hermione that he barely paid attention to anything else, not even when he nearly trampled a pair of rambunctious wizard children. Sorry, he muttered in Yaxley's voice. Harry caught sight of Dean Thomas, Lavender Brown, Parvati Patil, and Seamus Finnegan standing a little ways away from Florian Fortescue's ice cream shop. They were staring at a poster on the wall and speaking in low, anxious voices. Harry could not quite make out what they were saying. He wanted to know, as it was Harry's own face that looked down at the 4 of them. Ginny tugged at his arm. They took their time, making sure that enough people saw them. They had to be clearly identified, so they waited until each of them had been greeted by name before making their way to Ollivander's wand shop. Ginny entered first, while Harry and Ron loitered outside the door. She stuck her head back out a few moments later. All clear, she said in a low voice. Ron raised his wand, and the curse that came out of it blew up a section of the alley and an empty table outside the Fortescues. The screams were loud and immediate. Ron waved his wand again, and smoke obscured them. What the hell? Alert the Aurors. Get the kids out of here marrying now. Harry and Ron ducked inside the shop to find Mr. Ollivander already tied up and sitting on the chair. His eyes were wide and terrified. Harry only gave him a cursory look before turning back to the door and using the impenetrable charm. Did you shield the wands? Harry asked Ginny. Yes, she said. They'll be protected. Well, most of them. Harry grimaced. He did not especially like the idea of destroying the man's livelihood, even if it would be several years until Ollivander came back to it. The shelves were stacked with small black boxes that contained wands Ollivander had created with his own 2 hands. He was protecting the wand maker as best he could. He only hoped that the old man would be able to see it that way eventually. He tapped his throat with his wand, muttering the charm that would make his voice louder for the benefit of those outside listening. Pointing his wand at nothing, he shouted, You tell me, old man. Crucio. The curse destroyed a section of the shelves, sending boxes tumbling down. Crucio, Ginny shouted, and more wands rained down to the floor. Ron raised his voice, and said in a trembling voice that sounded remarkably like Ollivander's, "No, no, I don't know. Lies." Harry roared. "Our master knows you know the truth." "Crucio!" Ron shouted in his own voice. Harry found himself wishing that the twins were in on this plan. They would have invented several different useful items for them to use to make it look like they were laying waste to the entire shop without actually doing so. Ginny, once she had used her obligatory unforgivable, immediately began banishing all the wands she could back to Godric's Hollow. The screams from outside were growing louder. Harry knew that they did not have much more time. "Tell us, old man," he screamed. "Tell us. Maybe if we destroy his precious wands." Ron said in an ugly voice. "Do it," Harry said. Ron again used his skills at impersonation. "No, please don't." Harry and Ron waited until the last wand was banished, and then, together, they shouted Reducto and blew up all the shelves. Fine ash rained down on them. Harry used a smashing jinx to destroy 5 of the wands, grimacing with regret as he did so. "Sorry," he said to Ollivander, taking the charm off his voice. "It's got to look real." Ollivander gaped at him, opening and closing his mouth like a fish. Ginny had silenced him, but Harry did not think he was capable of saying anything. He looked extremely confused. "I live at 7 Skyview Lane, Godric's Hollow," Harry added in a whisper. "Keep that in mind." They waited a few minutes longer, generally wreaking havoc and destroying as much of the store as they could. Harry renewed the charm on his voice. "Tell us, or we kill you." "Crucio!" The ancient till exploded. "Crucio! Tell us, or I'll drive you insane." It was not until determined Aurors cursed the door repeatedly that Harry knew that it was time to go. "You didn't have to die," Harry said. The efforts to get past Harry's impenetrable charm redoubled, and Harry knew that the Aurors had heard him. He nodded at Ron, who started cursing everything within reach, loud bangs issuing from his wand that masked the sound of Ginny's disapparation and her reappearance moments later. "Use the Reductor curse," Ginny said in a cruel voice. "Let's watch him disappear in a bunch of itsy-bitsy pieces." "Good thinking, Electo," Harry said, mimicking her tone. "We've wasted a bunch of unforgivables today, haven't we?" Ron let out a ghastly scream, and then all 3 shouted Reducto at the desk. Ginny used her wand to sweep the ash into a more human-looking pile. In the next moment, the Aurors blasted through the impenetrable charm. Harry caught sight of the look on Kingsley's face, turned on the spot, and disapparated with a loud crack. As soon as Ron and Ginny appeared beside him, he let out a loud whoop and grabbed Ginny up into a hug and pounded Ron's back. "That went even better than expected," he crowed. "I didn't even intend for them to see us. We just barely escaped," Ginny pointed out, but she was grinning at his enthusiasm. "It's a good thing they can't do anti-apparition jinxes in Diagon Alley," Ron said. There was a muffled, furtive sound from behind Harry. He'd almost forgotten about Mr. Ollivander, who had been placed on the sofa, surrounded by piles and piles of his own wands. "Keep abound," Harry told Ginny, "just for a few minutes longer." However, Harry used his own wand to end the silencing charm. "Look," Harry said, "I'm really sorry about what just happened. I know you must be really confused." "I'm more than a little confused, Harry Potter," Mr. Ollivander said. Harry's eyes widened. How had he known who he was? "I recognize your wand. It is not a Micus Caro." "You're lucky it's Harry and not Caro," Ron informed him. "Caro really would have killed you. He's a Death Eater." "Can we get you anything to drink, Mr. Ollivander?" Ginny asked. "We've got a bit of a story to tell you." "Will you give me a butterbeer, Ginny?" Harry asked. "I've still got a bad taste in my mouth. A Micus tasted awful." Harry idly began using magic to stack the boxes. They would find a place for them at Grimmauld Place once Dumbledore showed up and gave Ollivander the secret. "What is going on?" Ollivander found his voice. Harry took a sip of the butterbeer Ginny had placed in his hand. "I'm protecting you. You're probably not going to believe me, but Voldemort is back. He returned the night I was accused of using the Imperius curse to suit my own aims as the next Dark Wizard." "You did use the Imperius curse," Ginny murmured. "Yeah," Harry said. "I did. We were taken by a portkey into a graveyard. I noticed that the headstone said Tom Riddle. He who must not be named's real name, Ollivander whispered. Yeah, Harry said. So, I implore you, Cedric, to get him away from there. I did it to protect him, the same reason why I abducted you. When Voldemort returned, he tried to duel me. Our wands didn't work against each other. I assume this is because of what you told me when I first bought the Hollyann Phoenix wand. Because they're brothers? There was an arrested look on Ollivander's face. Priori incanidum. Exactly, Harry nodded. I imagine Voldemort is curious about it, and I assumed that he would go after you. I can guess what methods he'd use to get out of you. In fact, Harry did not even have to guess. He'd seen the man tortured through a scar. Repeatedly. He'd also seen the state of Ollivander's body when he, Ron, and Hermione had been locked in the cellar of Malfoy Manor. And how did you know? I told him. Dumbledore interrupted Ollivander. He had arrived without Harry noticing it. You, Dumbledore, Ollivander stammered. Is it true? What Potter is saying? But, aren't you trying to search for him? What? Harry contacted me immediately after Voldemort returned, Dumbledore said. I decided to meet him in a safe location. I was going to bring him to the Ministry, but Harry did not threaten to attack. In fact, he had just been attacked. I followed a hunch and used my pensieve to view his memories of that night. Harry is not lying. Voldemort has returned. But the Ministry would never believe me, Harry informed him. So we're working quietly. Dumbledore is using the Ministry to help us and hinder Voldemort. He's the one who told us that you might be in danger, Harry lied. Moody chose that moment to apparate into the sitting room. You're dead, Ollivander yelled. Not quite, Moody said grimly. It's been taken care of, Potter. The Aurors are already swarming, and the Death Eaters fully believe that they were the ones to attack Ollivander. Moody nodded at Ron. Well done, boy, Ron beamed. And you? Moody growled at Ollivander. You're just as dead as I am. Only way we could get you-know-whose attention off you. He might find out anyway, Ollivander said. There are books and articles about wand lore, you know. Yeah, Moody said. But this way he doesn't have to torture you to do it. Ollivander's eyes rolled to the back of his head, and he toppled over, knocking over the stacks of boxes Harry had made. It was exceedingly dangerous for Harry, Ron, and Ginny to cross the barrier that led to Platform 9 3/4 and get onto the train, but they did it anyway. The disillusionment charm and the revulsion charm held up very well, however, and they were able to slip under the noses of the grim-eyed Aurors, who were supposed to be on the watch for just this sort of thing. It felt very odd for Harry to see the students. They were yelling, chatting, hugging their parents, and generally acting as though nothing was wrong. He even saw Cedric. He was snogging Cho Chang goodbye. He searched the crowd until he realized that he was looking for the familiar, bright red hair of the Weasleys. They would be here. The twins still had one more year left, after all. He fixed his eyes straight ahead. All three leapt up onto the train and quickly found a quiet spot that was not generally used until about halfway through the journey to Hogwarts, the loo. Muffliato, Harry said. Ron, you have the Marauder's map, right? Of course, Ron said, pulling it out of his pocket. I almost switched it with a new one, though. That could have been bad. Good thing you caught it, Ginny murmured. You know, your dad was a very talented wizard, Harry. Sirius told me that he's the one who figured out all the enchantments. Like father, like son, Harry quipped, and she laughed. I wish we could bring Hermione back with us, Ron said morosely. Doubt she'd go for it, though, even if I asked. Ronald Weasley, he said with an uncanny imitation of his future wife's voice. You know how important education is. Just because you're off in hiding doesn't mean I should be. She'll loosen up, Harry pointed out. Not this year, Ron said darkly. Not with the precious OWLs to get through, damn. I'm glad we don't have to live through that again. The train lurched forward and slowly began to pull away from King's Cross. The sound of stampeding feet faded away, and Harry knew that the students had placed all their belongings away and had settled into their compartments. Let's go find them, Ron said, after the train had left London. They could see rolling hills and pastureland outside the window. As silently as possible, they made their way down the train, peering into each compartment, looking for Hermione, Neville, and Luna. They found them in the second-to-last compartment, and Harry breathed a huge sigh of relief when he realized they were alone. From the anxious, fearful looks on their faces, he guessed that they were speaking about him. "Clear," Ginny murmured. Harry opened the door. "It's us," he hissed. The reaction was immediate. Hermione screamed and clapped her hand over her mouth. Neville fell off the chair, and Luna dropped her copy of the Quibbler. "Ron," Hermione whispered. She cringed toward the window. "Harry, Ginny, don't you know how dangerous it is for you to be here?" Harry lifted the revulsion charm, and all three of them stopped trying to get as far away from Harry, Ginny, and Ron as possible. "Yeah, we know," Harry said, "but it was worth it. Merlin, we've missed the three of you." "Muffliato," Ginny said firmly. "It doesn't hurt to be careful, Harry. It's been madness," Neville said fervently. "I've been worried all summer. I'm glad you didn't write, though. The Ministry's been watching us, me and Gran, ever since your trial. I heard that she defended me," Harry said, smiling. "And your dad, too, Luna." "I didn't tell her anything," Neville assured him. "But I told her that I knew you wouldn't have done it if you didn't have good reason, and that I thought you didn't do it to Crumb and Fleur, either. She believed me." Ginny and Ron exchanged pained looks. Harry knew exactly what they were thinking about, the fact that their parents had done and said whatever it was that had driven them out of the burrow, so he ignored them. "We've been busy," Harry said. He told them about Lockhart and got a standing ovation. Hermione beamed at Ron when he told her the scheme he'd thought up to discredit Death Eaters and take Mr. Ollivander away to safety. "That was brilliant, Ron." Hermione breathed, her face alight. "Thank you," Ron said. "Listen, we can't stay much longer, probably only another half an hour. Neville," he said, pulling out the Marauders map and giving it to Neville. "Will you give this to Fred and George? And here's yours. Don't mix them up. Look, I've put a little red X on the old one." "Right," Neville nodded. "Air, what do you want me to do with it?" "Just keep safe," Ron shrugged. "We have another one. We'll be spying on Umbridge and the children of known Death Eaters. If you see anything weird, anything at all, contact us." Neville exchanged looks with Luna. "How are we to do that? My Patronus is barely corporeal. I don't think I can make it talk yet. Hermione can do it, but—" "Don't worry, Neville," Harry said. He withdrew 3 mirrors from the pockets of his robes. "These are two-way mirrors. Just say our names. Neville, you're connected to mine. Luna, you're with Ginny. Hermione, you're with Ron. And we'll be able to talk. And watch." He tapped it with his wand and said, "Bitch," and it turned into a galleon. "In case Umbridge comes along, you do that and she won't catch you." Technically, the word bitch is now a spell. Specifically for this purpose, Ginny grinned. Sirius thought of it, and it can be used non-verbally, Harry continued. "Just make sure you keep your wand and the mirror in the same pocket." "Harry," Neville said seriously, once they had all finished laughing, "you know I'd rather come with you than stay in school. I'm sorry that I can't. I thought for a moment that you were going to abduct us. But my Gran, she would really worry. And I'm not like you guys. I haven't gone through school yet. If I'm going to help, I need to keep learning." "My dad told me that I was not to run off with you yet," Luna said. "You know we want the 3 of you with us," Ron said. "But we wouldn't have forced you to. Besides, it would just make things more complicated. Especially for the 2 of you. Hermione's a Muggle-born. Dumbledore could have told the Ministry that her parents were too worried to let her stay in. But that wouldn't have worked for either of you." Harry glanced out the window. Tall trees flashed by. Between them, he could see the hint of a lake. He sighed with regret. They were going to have to leave, and Harry had no idea when he would be able to see them again. Being in hiding felt very lonely without them all of a sudden. "Listen," Harry cleared his throat. "We think we'll be able to meet you in the Room of Requirements sometimes. Not all the time, but we will see you." "You're leaving already?" Luna asked. "We have to," Harry said. "We can't risk getting off the train in Hogsmeade. Every other person on the street will be an Auror. Moody would have our heads if we took that kind of risk." It was different on the platform. "Ron," Hermione spoke for the first time in 10 minutes. She had been deep in thought, but she gazed at Ron with a quiet certainty. "Ron, I want to come with you." Ron looked as though he'd been hit in the back of the head with a bludger. "What?" he said blankly. Ginny rolled her eyes, and Harry fought a smile. He could not say that he was completely surprised. He'd known for a while that it had been a long time since Hermione had placed her schoolwork above Ron. I'm coming with you, Hermione said firmly. But what about your OWLs? Ron asked. Instead of replying, Hermione leaned over and kissed him full on the mouth. Taking down Vivi Voldemort is more important. And so are you. I'll get her trunk, Harry volunteered. We gotta act fast. Disillusion her, Ron. He threw himself out of the compartment and toward the luggage rack. He walked purposefully, but had to shrink back against the wall when the door to the last compartment opened and the twins walked out. We'll just ask them if they know where they are, Fred said. Didn't the ministry tell us that there had apparently been no contact between any of them this summer? George asked. Ron and Ginny knew where he was, Fred pointed out. 2 days after they left the burrow, they were seen with him. Longbottom, Granger, and Lovegood might know too. Before they could say another word, Harry pointed his wand at them and froze their bodies. Unlike Petrificus totalis, however, the twins did not topple over, and they would not know that anyone had used a mild hex against them. Still, he had maybe a minute. He used magic to summon her trunk. He then shrunk it and put it in his pocket. "We've got to go," he said urgently, once he had returned. "Now." He opened the window and felt Ginny's warm hand in his. She was standing on top of the long, padded bench, and she pulled him up with her. The train was going over the bridge now, and the water of the lake far below them glinted in the afternoon sunlight. Ginny shifted, and he knew that she was preparing to jump. "What are we doing?" Hermione asked anxiously. "Why is the window open?" "Can't apparate from the train," Ron said. "We gotta jump shit, Harry. Tell her where we're going." Harry's heart fell to his stomach. Hermione could have been very badly injured if Ron had attempted to apparate with her to Sirius House. 7, Skyview Lane, Godric's Hollow, he said in a shaky voice. "Think about that." "I'll do that when I'm falling to my death," Hermione said. Her voice trembled. "I hate heights." "Do you trust me?" Ron asked. Harry did not stay behind for the answer. Ginny had tugged him out the window with her. There was a mad moment of free falling. He felt her twist in midair, and a second later they were in the sitting room, side by side on the couch. "How'd it go?" Remus asked. There was a loud crack, and Ron and Hermione appeared. "Brought Hermione with us," Ginny finished. The next few days were very bright for Harry and for the rest of the inhabitants at either the house in Godric's Hollow or Grimmauld Place. Even Mr. Ollivander had apparently accepted the fact that he was not going to be allowed to go back to his shop until Voldemort had been defeated. He had accepted their reasons without too much fuss, especially after he had had a long, private discussion with Dumbledore. Ron was especially ecstatic. It helped that he knew now that Hermione viewed him as more than a friend. Harry and Ginny had had a laugh about it that first night in bed. No matter how old, how skilled, or how brave Ron was, he could always be reduced to a quivering mass of fear without Hermione there to tell him she loved him. The stretch of bright days ended without warning. Harry slept, and while he slept, he dreamed of a home shaped like a rook. He held the arm of a screaming woman. It was an unfortunate necessity that she could not have simply been killed in her home. But in order for Potter to be blamed unequivocally for these murders, and it would take little effort, he had to play his hand very carefully indeed. These two purebloods had been the only voices that had defended Harry Potter. And more than that, they were the answer to the laughable warning Potter had given by way of that fool, Gilderoy Lockhart. "I will kill your friends," Voldemort thought, "and make them think it was you." He laughed, and the old woman screamed and kicked again. Potter had no idea who he was up against. Voldemort was the most powerful wizard alive, and Potter was quickly becoming the most reviled. Snape had seen to that. Tonight, Voldemort would ensure that no one would ever bring themselves to trust Harry Potter again. He blasted the door open. An odd old man. Voldemort laughed again. Potter surrounds himself with absurdities and old women. He's hardly a threat, gaped at him. Voldemort pushed the old woman away from him. There were 2 flashes of green light, and the old man and the older woman fell lifeless to the ground. Voldemort pulled out the letter he had forced Augusta Longbottom to write using the Imperius Curse. It was sufficiently damning that even when Voldemort chose to reveal his return to the world would always remember that Harry Potter murdered Augusta Longbottom and Xenophilius Lovegood simply because they had attempted to end their support of him. Harry, wake up! Ginny shouted in his ear. No, no, no! Harry bellowed. He was tangled in the bedclothes, and his entire body was covered with sweat. The muscles in his face hurt, and his jaw was clenched so tight that it ached. He rolled away from Ginny and vomited over the side of the bed. They're dead, he said in disbelief. Harry had been forced to watch like a passive spectator. It was not at all like when he had seen Arthur Weasley attacked by a giant snake. He'd had a chance, but there was no doubt that Mrs. Longbottom and Mr. Lovegood were dead. They're dead. I can't believe it. Ginny, we've got to. Who is dead? Ginny asked. Her eyes were wide and full of fear. Harry knew that she thought of her parents, her family, but the Weasleys were safe, shielded by their hatred of Harry. They were in more danger of being recruited by Voldemort than being murdered by him. The thought made him retch again. He touched his fist to his scar, as though if he pressed it hard enough, he could change what had just happened, what he had just seen. Neville's gran, Harry said. It hurt his chest to speak. Neville, Luna, and Luna's dad.
Welcome back to the page, Harry Potter fans. We've got a new chapter for Backward with Purpose, Part 1, Always and Always by Dead Woodpecker. And here we are at Chapter 27, Potter's Army.
Chapter 27, Potter's Army. Chapter text. It's my fault, Neville whispered. He had not spoken a word for nearly an hour. The headmaster's office had been silent since Harry had explained falteringly, and with tears streaming down his face, what had happened. Harry, who had been thinking precisely the same thing except in terms of himself and not Neville, jerked his head around. How did Neville work that one out? It isn't your fault. It is, Neville insisted. His face was twisted in a grimace of pain. He was shaking and looked as ill as Harry felt. Luna had not stopped wailing. It was a low, keening sound full of pain that tore Harry's insides. ITT told her that she should say something. She was only Mr. Lovegood, too. I don't think he would have said anything about it if it weren't for her. If it weren't for me. You got all wrong, Harry wanted to say. But he knew the signs of self-blame. Merlin knew that he had been there often enough. And it would take Neville a long time before he would be able to place the blame entirely where it belonged, on Voldemort. Nothing Harry could say would change this, so he did the only thing he could. He grabbed Neville's shoulders and hugged him. It isn't your fault, Harry said. It's Voldemort's fault. Hermione and Ginny wept with Luna and stroked her long, dirty blonde hair. Ron had one hand on Hermione's shoulder and the other on Ginny's. His blue eyes were wet. So were Harry's. In fact, Harry felt as though he were spinning out of control. This wasn't supposed to happen. Why did this happen? How could I let this happen? He should have known. He should have made sure that they were protected. He knew how dangerous it was to befriend Harry Potter. It was never more evident than at this moment. Harry's voice broke. I should have made sure they were protected. Neville, Luna, if we'd had any idea. Neville tried to pull himself together. It took visible effort. It isn't your fault either, Neville said hoarsely. Each word appeared to be torn out of him. If I can't blame myself, you can't. Harry grimaced. He knew that he had not used his wand and murdered the only family his two friends had left. No, he told himself firmly. Not the only family. We're their family. All right. Neville looked as haggard and weary as a man 100 years older than Dumbledore. He blindly reached for a chair, sat down, and put his head in his hands. He took a deep, shuddering breath. Harry gripped Neville's shoulder and felt his own lips tremble. The lamps in the room shone oddly through his tears. I just can't believe she's gone, Neville said. Just like that. Luna spoke up then. Harry had not noticed that she had stopped wailing. They aren't really gone, Neville. She was gasping a little, as though every word caused her mortal pain. They aren't. They're watching us. They still love us. Goodbye is never really forever. I agree, Hermione said, heartfelt. As do I, Dumbledore said firmly. Neville and Luna seemed to need silence. The hours passed. Dumbledore, Harry, Ginny, Ron, Hermione, and Sirius, Moody had gone to destroy the letter Voldemort had left, all stood a sort of vigil over their grief. There were murmurs. Harry even murmured some, but he did not know exactly what he said. Words came to him as though from a deep well inside his mind, one that he did not have ready access to. The rune that meant pain swam in front of his vision. Harry saw it in line of Neville's clenched jaw and the curve of Luna's back. There was one last hug, and Neville and Luna left. "Professor Dumbledore," Hermione said softly. What about my parents? I did not believe they were harmed this night." Harry would have. "No," she interrupted. "They need to be safe. They told me what I did, a memory charm. I want that to happen again. They wouldn't understand if we told them. So, can one of you—" "I'll do it," Sirius said gently. "Just tell me where they live." She did so, and he left immediately. Harry did not fully like the idea of toying with Mr. and Mrs. Granger's memories. But Hermione knew them a lot better than Harry did, and it wasn't as if they were stealing memories. Sirius would only give them different ones. And as soon as this was over, Mr. and Mrs. Granger would be restored. As soon as the fire in the hearth flared green, she sank into a chair and let out a low moan, as if what she had done had caused her physical pain. Ron knelt beside her and wrapped his arms around her. "What about?" Ginny said. Her lips were white. "What about our parents? What if they—" Harry did not think it was likely. Voldemort had not thought of the Weasleys at all. Though Harry had avoided any mention of them, he had not buried his head in the sand completely. He'd caught glimpses of headlines after Ron and Ginny had left the burrow. He knew that it was no great secret how Molly and Arthur felt about him. But he could not bear to tell Ginny this. It was a pain, perhaps just as strong as Hermione's, though in a different way, in Harry's heart that the Weasleys needed no protection from Voldemort. Harry knew that Dumbledore was thinking along these same lines. Harry guessed that even Ron and Ginny were thinking this. Hermione certainly was. But it would not be mentioned because that would be admitting to something no one wanted to say out loud. "There are wards that we can put up," Dumbledore said in a subdued voice. "We can put them up around the burrow. If you will allow me to think on it for a day, I will decide which ones will be most suited for our purposes." "Subtle ones," Ron said. "We don't want them figuring it out. They'd go to the effing prophet, and then Voldemort would figure out that we want to protect them. It'd be open season. Blood wards," Dumbledore murmured to himself. "But which?" He dug through an old trunk full of books. "Let's go back home," Ron said. "Hermione, you look like you're about to fall over. Let's get you to bed." "I don't care how sad I am," Hermione whispered. "I'm still not sleeping in your room." "Not yet," Ron said with a hint of a smile. "Harry," Ginny whispered, "I want to make sure that they're okay. I'm going to go to the burrow. I know you probably don't want to go." "Try and stop me," Harry said, though she was right. He absolutely did not want to go to the peaceful burrow. He felt like seeing it might feel quite like a knife to the gut. But Ginny would not be able to rest easily unless she did this. And Harry would not let her stand watch over her parents' house alone. They used the Floo to go back to Sirius' home in Godric's Hollow, and from there they operated to the small lane. Harry disillusioned himself and Ginny, wishing, with a pang, that he still had his invisibility cloak, and they crept up to the slanted building. "Hominum Revelio," Ginny whispered. "There are 3 people in there," she told Harry. "I'm assuming it's Mum, Dad, and Percy." Harry nodded. They found a comfortable patch of grass beneath a tree that afforded them a good view of the burrow. Harry rested his back against the tree, and Ginny sat between his legs and leaned up against his chest. They both had their wands out and ready, but neither truly thought there would be an attack. The sun rose and painted the burrow in golden, early morning light. Shadows moved across the windows. The inhabitants were stirring, preparing for the day, unaware of being watched. For the first time in a long time, Harry felt himself remembering the Weasleys the way they had been. The burrow had been a refuge for Harry, much more so than even Hogwarts. Mrs. Weasley, mothering and loving. Mr. Weasley, who always made time for his children, and Harry. The Weasley brothers who treated Harry like he was one of theirs. They had all played such a huge part in making Harry who he was. Harry laughed, and Ginny turned her head to the sound. "What is it?" "I'm just remembering your mom," Harry said. "Remember when the twins used Polyjuice Potion to fool her? And she thought they were 2 random muggle boys from the village who came looking for a glass of water." Ginny snorted. Mum was so confused She had no idea why the Muggle repelling charm had failed. And Fred and George kept asking questions. What was that brown thing that just ran by? It looked like a little person. Or how did that clock know that your son was coming home from work? The look on her face when they started turning back into themselves. Harry chortled. What about the time when Dad first saw Ron and Hermione snogging? Ginny said, the poor man, he was so confused. I think he was the only Weasley surprised by Ron falling in love with Hermione. Though maybe he was more surprised by Hermione falling in love with Ron, come to think of it. Did you know that he gave Ron the sex talk right after that? Did we ever tell you? Harry asked. I was up in Ron's room, and your dad came in and immediately started talking. I couldn't even escape. I don't think he noticed me, though, which was good because I think it was only 3 days after you and I slept together. Poor Harry, Ginny said, though it explains how you suddenly learned the contraception charm. Remember when you and your entire family thought that when Charlie talked about Norberta, he was talking about a girl and not a dragon? Harry grinned. For over a year, Ginny snickered. Mum lamented over the fact that she wouldn't be able to come for Christmas because of the war for weeks and weeks. Harry had no idea how much time passed while they reminisced about the family. The sun climbed higher and higher into the sky, reached its zenith, and started working its way down again. The backs of Harry's eyes felt scratchy from lack of sleep, but he did not feel tired. They kept their unseen vigil. Gradually, their voices tapered off. Harry could think of any number of stories, both silly and sweet, of the Weasley family, but now he preferred to sit in silence. Arthur, Molly, and Percy were still in the house. It was Saturday, and no one had to work. He wondered what they were saying, what they were talking about. He suspected that a widely discussed topic was the absence of their youngest son and daughter and what Harry might be doing to them. Remember how he never even considered that things might be different? Harry said in a low voice, I remember that conversation with Dumbledore's portrait. If there was one thing I was certain of, it was your parents' affection. He was so adamant that we weren't to tell Mum and Dad and the others until Voldemort returned, Ginny said in a low voice. Ron and I, while we were at the Burrow earlier in the summer, before the huge argument, we started wondering if maybe he knew. Harry smiled. It was so easy to think of Dumbledore as having powers beyond any other wizard. But Dumbledore was, after all, just a man. I don't think, and we don't either, Ginny said. Not really. He couldn't possibly have known. But I just can't help thinking, I know it's awful, but if my parents had been supportive of you, they could very well have been killed by Voldemort last night. Harry had already thought of this. A small voice in the back of his head had repeated the refrain. Thank Merlin, it wasn't the Weasleys. Thank Merlin, it wasn't the Weasleys. He felt horrible for even thinking it. It was awful that Augusta Longbottom and Zeno Lovegood had been murdered. But he had to admit to himself that he might well have given everything up had the Weasleys been lost last night. Irrational anger directed toward the Weasleys surged up inside him. He hated it that he felt at all relieved about the situation. He hated it that his heart seemed to be torn to shreds because of them. Ginny seemed to sense his tension. Remember how we came back in time to save them? Always and always, Harry. That was the promise. No matter what. She was right. But Harry knew that something had broken inside him. The chain that had bound him to the Weasleys had broken. He loved them, yes, but he loved the memories of them, not who they actually were. And he loved them because Ginny still loved them, despite the fact that Molly and Arthur must have said some terrible things. But the Molly and Arthur of this time and this place, Harry thought he might loathe them. It was unfair to them. But the rational, reasonable part of him was growing fainter and fainter. Harry eventually dozed in the late afternoon sun. He slid into sleep and into a nightmare. He was in the Forbidden Forest, and people were calling out his name. He hurried toward their voices, but it was difficult to manage because the trees were upside down. He ran and ran until he came to a sharp cliff. He looked across and saw all the Weasleys wearing golden crowns standing on the other side. He looked down and saw that the cliff had no bottom, but something bright and shining was coming up to him. A giant copy of the Pain Rune approached, providing a bridge to the other side. But no, he did not want to step on it. He was afraid of the pain it would cause, and he could hear Voldemort's high, cold laugh. "Harry!" Ginny shook him awake. "We fell asleep." "Sorry," Harry groaned. "Are they okay?" "I'm sure they are," Ginny said softly. It was early evening, and the first stars were beginning to come out. Ginny performed the spell that would reveal human presences again. "3 people still," Ginny said. She yawned. "Merlin, I'm exhausted. That nap was not nearly long enough." "Not for me, either," Harry said. Still, they both remained vigilant until it was full night. Several pops disturbed the silence of the orchard in which Harry and Ginny sat. They rose to their feet with one fluid motion and pointed their wands in the direction of whoever had just apparat. "Where do you think they are?" Hermione hissed. "Right here," Harry said. He lowered his wand. "You could have warned us you were coming here," Ron said grumpily. "We had no idea where you'd run off to until Dumbledore came to tell us he'd found the wards." "Hush, Ron. We were almost certain they were here," Hermione said. "Which wards did you choose?" Ginny asked, interested. 7, Dumbledore said. "They're subtle, as Ron said they should be, but I think they will be even more powerful because of it. Any outright, blatant wards of protection would tell Voldemort what we do not wish him to know, should he chance by the burrow, or any of the Death Eaters." "He's come up with a brilliant plan," Hermione said, and awe colored her voice. "The wards will be laid out every few feet. Whoever is trying to enter the burrow will have to make it through all of them, and each ward will communicate with one another. It's all very complex." It sounded complex, and Harry was not quite sure if he truly understood what either Hermione or Dumbledore were saying. Wards communicating with each other? And what did it matter if they weren't all in the same location? Dumbledore seemed to read Harry's mind. "Complex wards, the kind we will be constructing tonight, are almost sentient, like wands. Once someone has passed through the first, certain information will be given to the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and the seventh wards. Same with all the rest. The first, second, third, and fourth are wards of intent. If anyone has ill will toward any of the Weasleys, the first will pick up on it. Then the second will judge if the ill will is directed toward Ron and Ginny, or if it is directed to the other Weasleys, or both. I believe that this will be the one to determine whether or not the person is a Death Eater. The third will then judge the strength of the ill will. For instance, if a ministry worker who does not particularly care for Arthur approaches, he will not be in immediate danger. But will that stop Death Eaters? Harry asked. Death Eaters will be pretty hacked off at us too. Which is why I am here, Snape said smoothly. Harry started. He'd had no idea that Snape was with them. What you may not know is that the protean charm that is burned on our skin has created a bond, very similar to the blood bond, between all of the Death Eaters. Dumbledore will be able to create a ward that will stop all those who are the Dark Mark. But if you can do that, why are you bothering with the other wards? Harry asked. Not all of the Dark Lord's followers have the mark, Snape said. Fenrir Greyback, for one. I assume you do not wish him to be allowed access to your family home. Definitely not, Ginny said. That will be the fourth ward, Dumbledore said, and the only one that you will not assist me with in the creation. The fifth ward will both compel the Death Eater or other follower of Voldemort to turn back, and it will alert Ron and Ginny to the fact that Voldemort had reason to send someone to seek out your parents and brothers. Not even Lord Voldemort will be able to push through this ward. What about the sixth and the seventh, though? Harry asked. He felt slightly confused. It seemed as though they wouldn't need the last two, if what Dumbledore had said was true. The sixth, which will actually be physically located after the first ward, will know if the Death Eater has come calling again, Dumbledore said, and the seventh will kill. Harry found himself in complete and total agreement with Hermione. Dumbledore's plan was so brilliant and so cunning that Harry was awed by it. He could tell that Ginny was as well. Even though Harry had strong doubts that any Death Eater would call on the Weasleys, Voldemort may well decide to kill them for the sole purpose of revenge on Ron and Ginny. Harry did not think this would happen anytime soon, if at all, but it did not hurt to be cautious. And Dumbledore's plan was a masterpiece. Later, Harry would realize that the hours they spent creating the wards or watching Dumbledore do it, with brief assistance from Snape, Ron, and Ginny, felt like a ceremony. No one laughed, no one joked, Ron managed to stop the funny, but inappropriate comments from coming out of his mouth, and no one said any more than they had to. Harry stood beside Hermione and watched the runes go up, flaring and sparkling like the moon and stars, before they faded. He could not help but notice that he felt as though he was not only protecting the Weasleys, but he was also saying goodbye to his last shred of hope that they would join him. HPHPHPHPHPHPHP. Longbottom, Lovegood found dead. By Aggie Lafferty. Late last night, the Ministry received an anonymous tip that 2 bodies had been found at the Lovegood residence. The Aurors immediately went to investigate and found that this was the truth. The Ministry refuses to comment further, though Bertha Jorkins, new member of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, confirmed last night that the murders had been perpetrated with the killing curse. The Aurors refuse to mention Harry Potter as yet, though the Daily Prophet would like to mention that we believe that this, too, is the work of Potter. It may even be that he killed them himself, instead of having followers do it, for the article concerning the trial of David Yaxley, and Amicus and Electo Caro, and the murder of Mr. Ollivander. Wandmaker, see page 4. It is no coincidence that the 2 killed had, in the past, supported Harry Potter. Lucius Malfoy graciously offered another interview, and has this to say: "It is no secret that Potter expects loyalty from his friends. I would not be surprised if Mrs. Longbottom and Mr. Lovegood had refused to continue in their support. My son Draco claims that Potter's little school friends were extremely terrified of him." Lucius Malfoy offers words of wisdom, as always. As we have previously stated, see other issues for articles regarding Ronald and Ginevra Weasley. It may be that they have been coerced into joining Potter against their free will. Their parents have testified to that end. The Daily Prophet would like to add this warning to all witches and wizards: do not attempt to reason with Potter. If you see him, alert the Ministry at once. He has already proven himself skilled with the Imperius curse. Do not give him time to enchant or bewitch. Harry was idly wondering if they ought to retaliate against Voldemort by killing all of his Death Eaters, or if they ought to humiliate them in some way. Their plan with the Caros and Yaxley had worked rather splendidly. They were now in Azkaban. Even though Harry knew they would be liberated when the other Death Eaters were, it still felt rather nice to have them out of the way. For now, the thing holding him back from killing, however, was the truth that Voldemort would attempt to counter his move. But what would he do? Harry, Ginny, Ron, and Hermione had spent endless hours of discussion on just this topic. It was now the middle of October. Mr. Lovegood and Mrs. Longbottom had been murdered in the beginning of September, and they still had not done anything to retaliate. Pettigrew could die, Harry thought. Voldemort would not even be surprised. But fear for the lives of those he loved stayed his hand. He desperately wanted revenge, but he also wanted to protect. Just the night before, after a long day of tutoring Hermione, although mostly she tutored them, Harry had thrown his hands up in despair and told Ron that if he could come up with a plan to take out Death Eaters without murdering them, and making them heroes in the eyes of the Ministry, then Ron should let Harry know, and they would do it. "Harry!" Neville's voice came from a mirror that sat on the table. "Harry, are you there?" Harry leapt up from the couch so fast that he nearly fell over. Neville had only contacted him 4 times in the last month and a half. "Neville, what is it? Is it that stupid bitch again? Do you need more essence of Murtlap?" Neville had contacted him about Umbridge each time, with increasingly nasty news. Umbridge had suspended him and Luna from all Hogsmeade visits. She had forced them into detention and attempted to force them into telling her where Harry was. Each bit of news had been said in a flat, dead sort of voice that made Harry want to strangle Voldemort and Umbridge with his bare hands. "No," Neville said. He sounded different, almost excited, and yet afraid of Harry's reaction. "It isn't about Umbridge. I sort of made a mistake." "Well, tell me what it is, and I can fix it." Harry immediately promised. He did not want Neville to think that Harry would be angry at him for anything, barring joining Lord Voldemort. "No," Neville said. Harry peered at him closely. The mirror showed him a grief-stricken young man, but he saw a spark of hope in Neville's eyes that pleased Harry very much. He did not believe that Neville could fully recover from the death of his grandmother, but he was healing. "No, I made a mistake, but... Harry, you won't believe what happened." Then Neville told him what had been happening at Hogwarts in the last few weeks. Neville had been right. He'd had to repeat himself several times before Harry actually believed it. Harry rocked back on his heels, holding the mirror very close to his face. He stared at Neville without really seeing him, an internal war taking place in his head. It'll just put them in danger. They already are in danger, but not like this. We saw what he did to Neville's gran and Luna's dad. Are we back to the cycle of self-blame and pushing people away? Aren't we too old for that now? Yes, no. I don't know. Just shut up. We already know we have to do this. We should be happy about this. All right, Harry blew out a breath. We'll come tonight. We'll be there. Neville smiled, the first real smile since his grandmother had been murdered. Harry stared at him intently, noticing, as he did so, that Neville actually reminded him a lot of himself after Cedric had died the first time. Harry knew that Neville was angry and resentful toward pretty much everyone. Luna had mentioned this to Ginny several times. But Neville had also been trying to rise above that, obviously. Harry felt absurdly proud of him. "I'm about to tell the others," Harry said. "Be there at 7:30, Neville told him. "I'll need some time to explain a few things." Ginny, Ron, and Hermione had none of the misgivings that Harry had. All three were doing a victory dance before the words had fully left his mouth. After a few moments, Sirius had abandoned all dignity and joined in, laughing. Harry just stood there, watching them, until Ginny dragged him out and spun him around the floor. It was like having a breath of fresh air after spending what felt like months in a cave. Despite his worries, Harry's stomach quivered with excitement and gratitude. He had more friends at Hogwarts than he actually thought. 15 minutes before they were told to arrive, Harry and everyone who lived at either Grimmauld Place or the house in Godric's Hollow, except Ollivander, apparated into the private room in the Hog's Head Inn. Hermione was busily checking over her notes. Ron was bouncing from foot to foot. Ginny was beaming. Moody was still invisible, and Sirius' eyes glinted. He's always been up for getting students to break the rules, Harry thought ruefully. There were quick, sharp footsteps on the stairs, and Albus and Aberforth Dumbledore both appeared. "I have finished explaining to him the reasons why we need to use this room in the pub far more often," Dumbledore said. "I've agreed," Aberforth said gruffly. "We'll have to put a privacy charm, a strong one, on the door. It isn't that unusual for a few of my patrons to want a quiet place to talk. That's over now, though." "Thank you, Mr. Dumbledore," Harry said politely. "And, Professor, I didn't expect to see you here." "No," Dumbledore said, surprised. "I thought you might wish to have an extra symbol of authority. And I will also be able to ensure that they will not tell this secret. If Umbridge were to hear, it would have ghastly consequences." "I know," Harry said. "Thank you. Let us not keep them waiting." Dumbledore gestured to Ariana's portrait. "It would be extremely impolite to be late." One by one, they clambered through the portrait hole and followed the twisting corridor up to Hogwarts and to the Room of Requirement, where Neville had gathered, against all odds, students who had seen what adult wizards had not: flaws in the story presented by the Ministry. Harry's first impression of the Room of Requirement was that of a wax museum filled with his stunned, frozen classmates. Dean Thomas, Seamus Finnegan, Lavender Brown, Parvati and Padma Patil, Hannah Abbott, Colin and Dennis Creevy, Justin Finch-Fletchley, Ernie Macmillan, and to Harry's great surprise, Daphne Greengrass stood gaping at him. Neville and Luna stood in front of them, looking rather smug. "Blimey," Dean Thomas said as Ron and Ginny followed Harry. "Hermione," Lavender said, "we thought your parents had kept you home this year? That's what? I'm so confused." Comfortable chairs began appearing as Sirius and Dumbledore and the invisible Moody climbed in as well. Daphne squeaked and clapped her hand over her mouth. Harry eyed her, wondering how Neville had thought of approaching a Slytherin. Not that it was a bad thing, but Neville, as a rule, was quite afraid of the snake's set. "So," Harry said, thanks for thinking that I'm not some mad dark wizard." "We're not sure about that," Parvati Patil said, her arms crossed. "Neville and Luna's story sounds completely ridiculous. And yet you're here," Parvati, Hermione said calmly. "And so are the rest of you." They all exchanged uncertain glances. "Things just don't make sense," Dean said. All these articles, most of them don't sound like you. I can see you using the Imperius. Which I did, Harry said solidly. Several of them shrank back. Hannah and Ernie looked fearfully at his wand, as though he were about to start Imperiusing all of them. But we didn't think ye'd use the Cruciatus, Seamus said. Remember when ye pulled Draco Malfoy out of the way of that hippogriff? And ye got yourself hurt, and ye hate Malfoy. And when we heard that Neville's grandmother and Luna's dad were killed, Padma Patil said, we knew that you'd never do it. We asked Neville about it. Dean indicated himself and Seamus. Whether or not he really thought you'd done it, and he sort of screamed at us that it wasn't you. It was you-know-who. We thought he was completely mad, Seamus said. But we thought about it. I knew you weren't evil, Harry. Colin Creevey said excitedly. I knew it. The conversation disintegrated after that. Everyone was trying to speak over each other, and Harry could hardly hear what anyone was saying. He caught snatches of it. Apparently Hannah Abbott still did not quite believe that Voldemort had actually returned. Neither did Justin Finch Fletchley. The only thing that they could all agree upon was that something weird was going on involving Harry and his friends, and they did not believe everything that was printed in the Daily Prophet. Only Daphne Greengrass remained silent and watchful. She stood a bit apart from the rest, as if she was not sure that she was supposed to be here. Harry took a deep breath, preparing to shout at everyone to just shut up, and he'd give them an explanation when Daphne stopped him. You know who is back, she said. I thought you said none of the Slytherins were talking about it, Hannah said rather nastily. Daphne raised her brow. They aren't, but several of them are strutting even more than usual. You know, Draco and his two loser friends, Crabbe and Goyle. Not Flint. They're all acting like they've got a great big secret. And it could just be that their Happy Potter's been smeared Slytherin. It doesn't have to be because you know who is back, Hannah persisted. You're forgetting, you Hufflepuff moron, that Professor Dumbledore is here, Daphne said coldly. Which means that he probably believes that you know who is back, and that Harvey here is telling the truth. I'm sorry if that pretty much convinces me. Thank you, Miss Greengrass, Dumbledore murmured. His eyes were twinkling. I do indeed believe that Harry is telling the truth, he added. Everyone listened silently as he spun the same lie that he had told Mr. Ollivander. Harry had contacted him, and Dumbledore had listened to him and believed. By the time Dumbledore finished, the audience was gaping at Harry. He thought they might be more impressed by the fact that he had used the Imperius Curse to save Cedric's life than anything else. Blimey, Dean said. Seamus whistled. Why aren't you telling the Ministry, though? Ernie Macmillan asked. Don't you think that everyone ought to know that you know who is back? The Ministry, Sirius said, has entered a state of advanced paranoia. Harry could tell all the truth he wanted until he was blue in the face, but no one would listen. But when we all tell them, Parvati began. I am afraid that you will have to keep this conversation a secret, Dumbledore interrupted. In fact, I'm afraid that I will have to take measures to ensure your silence. What? Dean said blankly. You can't tell anyone that you saw me, Harry said. You have to pretend like this conversation never happened. But you're innocent, Justin Finch Fletchley said indignantly. The whole school should know. They wouldn't believe it, Ron said implacably. And you just get hauled into Umbridge's office. When everyone exchanged dark looks, Harry suspected that Umbridge's use of a blood quill had not remained a secret. Luna and Neville both raised their right fists, upon which were the words, I must not tell lies. And this is just because she thinks we're lying about not knowing where Harry is, Neville said grimly. If she knew that you were meeting here tonight, if she even suspected that you had met Harry and believed him, the consequences would be dire, Dumbledore said. The Ministry is interfering here at Hogwarts, and I can assure you that the Aurors would strenuously question you, despite the fact that you are still children. But if I said anything, I would have to follow Harry into hiding, Dumbledore said. I would not be allowed to remain here, offering what help I can to the students. And he would lose any power he had in the Wisengamot, Harry said. We need him there more than I need him to defend me. The same goes for you. Hermione pulled out a blank parchment from her bag. You will all need to sign this, she said firmly. It will bind you to your promise that this does not leave the room. Neville and Luna won't sign. They've known for a while now that they have to keep this a secret, and if there are more people who begin to suspect something is funny, they'll be able to talk about it. But, Ernie said uncertainly, what will happen if we do say something? You won't be able to, Hermione said. There's a jinx on this paper that will prevent you from speaking about it. It's a strong silencing charm. That's the only jinx, I promise. Daphne Greengrass was the first to sign. Harry suspected that she knew that she had the most to lose. Of all of them, she would be in the most physical danger if word got out that she was on his side. Colin and Dennis signed, beaming. Ernie and Hannah were the most reluctant, but they added their signatures anyway in the end. I have a question for you, Harry said. Do you want to learn a fight? Do you want to be able to defend yourselves against Voldemort? Of course, Ernie answered promptly. But Umbridge is completely useless. I don't see how we're going to pass our OWLs with her teaching us. That bitch is too afraid of what you'll do with it, Sirius said. We know that the Ministry is trying to stop you lot from learning spells that can be used in a duel or a fight. They're dead afraid that Harry here will decide to enchant his old-school friends. There's nothing they can do about the adults who have already learned these kinds of spells, but they want you lot handicapped as much as possible. And you won't have to fumble around with what Umbridge isn't teaching you, Harry added, grinning at the gleeful looks when Sirius called Umbridge a bitch. We'll teach you ourselves. We'll meet here as often as possible. Colin Creevey and his brother looked almost painfully eager. Harry felt a little pang of sadness at how willing they were to learn how to fight. He suspected that one day they would be put to use, and Harry wondered how long their innocence would survive in this war. Harry fervently hoped that it would be a long time before they saw Thestrals. Betrayal came swiftly and suddenly from a source unexpected. Neville. If we're going to learn to fight, we've got to have a proper name, don't we? And I've got the perfect one, since the Ministry's so afraid of it happening. Potter's Army. Harry gaped at him before he could stop it and vehemently refused to allow them to use his name. It should be Dumbledore's Army, for the love of Merlin. Everyone enthusiastically agreed. Harry glared at Ron and Ginny when they hooped and applauded. No, Neville, I don't think. It's perfect, Neville said stubbornly. It fits. Harry eventually had to stop arguing, though only because Ginny threatened to use her bat bogey hex on him. He still felt rather mutinous and annoyed. However, up until Hannah asked what their first lesson would be. Your first lesson, Harry began, already planning to teach them how to stun each other. But before he could finish, Moody released his charm. Constant vigilance, he shouted. Needless to say, it took several more minutes of explanations as to how their professor had come back from the dead before the others were ready to begin. Potter's Army, indeed.